Do you have a word of the year? I have two actually. One of my words for the year 2023 is connection. Connection. I have had a very hard time connecting with people one-on-one. Not because I don't like people, not because I haven't been around people, but because deep down, at my roots, I am an introvert. Now, once the pandemic hit and I was no longer forced to interact with people, I just stopped interacting with people. And then to get back into the swing of things, to get back into that connected space, even though I love people, I know how to reach them. They usually feel drawn to me and I feel drawn to them after we start the conversation. Has been kind of hard just to get back into the swing of things. And I figured maybe it's been hard for some of you as well. Maybe you are someone who also identifies as an introvert. Maybe you are someone who also feels very comfortable in the shadows and kind of hiding behind the scenes. Maybe you are one of those people that when you are having conversations one-on-one, you are fine, you're okay, you can carry on the conversation, and people even find you interesting and charismatic. But when you are either in a large group of people or you are faced with someone that intimidates you a little bit, either because they have this really loud, boisterous energy, or because you consider them people who are more important than you in whatever shape or form that might be. So maybe your boss or an investor, someone who is important in your business and has something to say in relation to whether you're successful in what you're doing or not, then you get intimidated and you pull back. And then you think back to those conversations and you want to kick yourself because you think, wait a minute, I knew exactly what to say. I had the right words. I had the right response. It just didn't come out, right? So these opportunities to network and to connect with people become really difficult. They become this test of your mettle and this test of your ability to push beyond what you're comfortable doing. So what I want to share today with you is 3 keys to effective networking, even if you're an introvert. Do you want to know what those are? Let's go. So before we dive into the actual 3 keys, and there might be a bonus at the end, hint, hint, I just want to point out that the keys we're going to talk about, the distinctions we're going to make during our conversation today, apply not only to introverts, even though they will help introverts a lot, but they will help anybody who wants to maximize their time spent in networking, right? What I have found is that as 2023 hit, people have started creating all these opportunities to network in person because we had such a long period of time when we couldn't. So everybody's hungry and eager to connect, to be with other people, to build these real connections in a way that facilitates the interaction and the progress and the being together in one space. So what I have found is that we are more and more exposed to opportunities where we can network in person with other people. But even if we're talking virtually, that's another thing. Even if we are engaging virtually, then it's important for you to understand these 3 key elements to networking and to doing it effectively. It's important to get to the space where you can execute these things in a way that feels natural and comfortable. And I want to preface all of this then by saying that the only way you're going to get more and more comfortable with these techniques is by actually using them. So everything we're going to talk about today is better and gets even better and better and better as you practice. Now, our goal, and we're going to talk more about intentions in 1 minute, but our goal is never perfection. If you put the pressure on yourself that you have to be perfect in any interaction, in any circumstance, in any situation, then that pressure is going to get the better of you. It's not going to allow you to naturally progress through the event or the situation, whatever that might be. So it's important for us to have those 2 things very clear, right? The first one is this will work for introverts, but it's not only for introverts. It will work for anybody listening, and it will work whether you're virtual or life. And the second thing is that what we're going to talk about today is not meant in any way, shape, or form to add stress or pressure, to make you feel like if you're not doing these things, or if you're not doing them in the way we're going to discuss, then you're not doing it perfectly and you're messing up and you're not doing it right. There's no such thing. The only way you get to not do it right is to avoid the situations altogether and allow the fear to take over, right? So we're going to talk about 3 things that are going to help you move forward and make the best of any networking space, any networking and connecting situation, regardless of whether you consider yourself an introvert, an extrovert, regardless of your personality, regardless of the context, right? Whether it's live or, in person or in a virtual room, it doesn't matter. You're going to be able to maximize these networking events if you do your best to slowly but surely continue to incorporate and practice these things that we're going to be talking about today. Sound good? Awesome. So the first thing is, before any networking event, before you even register for it, clarify your intention. So that is the first key, is clarify your intention. Know and be aware of why you want to participate in that networking event, right? Make sure that you understand what the reason is and how and when you're going to know that you have accomplished your goal in that space, right? That being said, let's be clear on overall what networking events are for. We make the mistake, or at least I used to make the mistake of going to networking events thinking I'm going to leave this event with JV partnerships, with customers that are going to buy my product or service, with people that are going to want to partner with me, with all these collaborations, and I'm going to leave the room feeling like I'm on top of the world because I'm going to have all of this business coming at me because of this one networking event. Let's just release that right now and let it go. Your intention at a networking event should never be to sell in any way, shape, or form. The intention of networking is to create connections and relationships, right? I will say that again. The overall intention of any networking event is to create connections and relationships, because we understand that connection is currency, right? And that is not my term. A lot of my mentors say that in many different ways. But connection is currency. When you have an effective connection, when you build relationship, when you are out there trying to help others, then there's this effect of reciprocity, which is not why you do it, but it takes hold, right, of the situation, of the relationship. And this reciprocity starts taking place where they want to help you as well. So you go to a networking event mainly with the mindset of understanding that anybody who puts together a networking event, yes, they ultimately want to start building a list. Yes, they ultimately want to maybe eventually generate these leads or these partners or these collaborations. And that's all well and good. But if everybody who goes to a networking event goes with the idea that they're going to sell, get immediate leads, and move forward in business, then what's going to happen? Nobody's going to do anything, right? And it's going to become this just Shark Tank almost, where everybody's trying to eat everybody else, and it's not going to be comfortable and it's not going to be pretty. So for yourself, first of all, understand that any networking event that you go to, the main goal should be to create connections and relationships, right? To create those bonds, to know that that person now knows who you are, what you do, how you can serve them, to offer to be of service and of value, right? But not to sell, not to leave the room with JV partners and collaborations, not to leave the room with contacts that you're going to necessarily turn into leads or prospects, but just connections. And connection is currency, right? Now, beyond that, you should be clear and aware of what your personal intention is, right? Like for me, 2023, like I said before at the beginning, one of my themes for the year is connection. And it's because I want to rebuild my ability to connect with people. I want to create a network around myself of people that I can serve, that I can help, that I can support, of people that are like-minded, that are building businesses and who are entrepreneurs, who are out there looking for solutions instead of creating problems. And so having those people in my network, in my life, in my space is more than enough for me. But for each individual event, depending on what type of event it is, I go with a specific intention, and attached to that intention is a measurement, something that is going to help me know for sure whether I achieved my intention or not, right? And once I achieve my intention, then I can make a decision. Do I want to stay or do I want to go? And that makes it a lot easier for us introverts, actually. If, for example, my intention is I am going to go into this room and I'm going to make sure that I have 5 connected conversations with 5 different people. And a connected conversation is simply a connection where I'm focused, where I'm present, where my only goal is to mine all the gold out of the conversation, to hear them out as much as possible. And we're going to talk more about this in a minute, and to really make a connection with that person. Then what I know is that once I have made those 5 connections and I have had those 5 conversations, I'm done. I've gotten out of the event what I went there for, right? And I don't need to push myself any further. I don't need to stay in that discomfort any further. And it's not that it's going to be comfortable and easy. It's just that I can keep telling myself, okay, Mars, if you have 5 more conversations, then you can make a decision to go. If you just make 3 more conversations, 3 more, then you're free to go. And I can keep using that as fuel to move me forward when I feel the discomfort, when I feel uncomfortable, when I feel like I might be about to die, honestly, sometimes. But when I feel like what I'm doing is too much, I can always go back to that intention and tell myself, you know what, you're so close. You are so incredibly close. You're almost there. Just get these 5 out of the way, and then you can move forward. And you can create whatever intention makes sense for you. If you're going to a networking event that includes a chat or that includes some sort of training, then maybe your intention is to get the most out of the training and shake hands with 3 people. Perfect. You paid attention, you were present in the training, you shook hands with 3 people, maybe introduced yourself. You're free to go. If you want to stay, you can stay, but you're free to go. You don't have to stick around anymore. So the first key is to clarify why you want to go there and how you're going to know for sure when you have actually accomplished it. And that takes away that inner negotiation. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, I'm going to go in. I'm going to talk to someone. No, I'm not. That's too uncomfortable. But you said you would. I don't know. It's just too much. And then you keep trying to convince yourself not to do the thing that you said you were going to do. And usually the not do wins over the do, right? But if you have a clear measurement, if you're like, no, Mars, you promised yourself that you would meet 5 people and have 5 conversations, connected conversations, and you've only had 1. You need to do 4 more. Then you move forward, and that helps you understand also that you don't need to push yourself too far. You can be as strict with yourself as you possibly can, and then you can reward yourself afterwards because you did it. But don't let yourself off the hook until you have met the intention and you have the measurement to prove that you met the intention. I went to this one networking event not too long ago that I knew was going to be a cozy event. I knew it wasn't going to be 300 or 400 people. And I said to myself, you're not leaving this room until you shake hands with everybody in the room. You don't have to have connected conversations this time around. You don't have to get to know everybody, but you have to shake every hand before you leave and say your name, at least your name and what you do. And then you can go, right? And I did that. And it turned into other conversations, which turned into connections, which turned into relationships that I am now nurturing and that are being nurtured on both sides. And it was amazing. And there were maybe 20, 25 people in that room, but I shook all 20 or 25 hands and I had some nice conversations. And then when I left, I felt awesome because I had done what I set out to do in the beginning. I made the most out of the event and I knew that my intention was met. Make sense? So that's number 1. Number 2, be fully present by focusing on one person at a time. And I kind of hinted at this before in the previous point of clarifying your intention, but here's what I mean. Introverts especially, but all of us tend to get intimidated by walking into a space where there's tons of people and where we feel like we have to be on for all those people, where we feel like we have to put on this persona or act in a way that looks confident all the time, or go in there and captivate people just by our presence, or somehow make it so that everybody in the room knows we're there and wants to know who we are. That's too much pressure. That makes it really, really difficult. Even when I'm training people on how to be more comfortable speaking in public, my main goal is to help them understand that they're not having a conversation, that they're not talking to an audience, right? They're simply having one-on-one conversations in bulk, right? So you're having one-on-one conversations with a bunch of people, but it's one-on-one conversation still. It's still talking to your friend. It's still talking to your spouse. It's still talking to, I don't know, the cashier at the cash register in the grocery store. It's still just a one-on-one conversation. So the same thing applies to networking events. I went to an event, again, in this process of living up to my theme of connection. There were at least 350 people in one not so big space. It was crowded. It was loud. It was every introvert's nightmare. It was so horrifying. I kid you not. I walked into that space, and I have a tendency to arrive early. So when I arrived, there weren't that many people, but still the space itself felt like it was closing in on me. It felt closed off and dark, and I don't know, it just felt uncomfortable. And then as people kept walking in and trickling in, eventually the room was so full. I tell you, I kid you not, 350 people at least. There might have been more. But how did I handle that? My gut reaction was to flee. It was to just book it out of there, go find another event, forget about this one. You're not getting anything out of this one. But my intention had been to make 5 connected conversations for that one. So what I did first and foremost was I went to the bathroom, calmed myself down, took a couple of deep breaths, and reminded myself of what my intention was. And that was actually the first event I did this year. So it was brand new in terms of getting back out there. And it felt so uncomfortable that I said, you know what? You made the intention of 5 connected conversations. In this sea of people, you get to just find 5 eyes to connect with and to have a conversation with. 5 pairs of eyes, not 5 eyes, 5 pairs of eyes. And so that's what I did. I went back out with this new, refreshed, right, idea of what I got to do before I got to leave. And I found someone sitting on a couch. I said, okay, you can sit. That's nice. So I sat next to them, looked them in the eye, and introduced myself. And I started that conversation. And that conversation lasted maybe 10, 15 minutes, but I felt it was connected. I felt like I was really listening. I felt like I really got to know who this person was, what they did, what they were there to get, their intention for being there, and a little bit more information about how they operated. Then I stood up. Actually, they stood up. They said, I'm going to go mingle. And I said, that's a good idea. I'm going to do the same thing. So we both stood up and we started walking. As I was walking up, there were these steps. As I was walking up the steps, I caught the eye of someone who was standing at the top of the steps, not talking to anybody. So I went over, looked them in the eye the whole time. They knew I was coming towards them, smiling big. And I shook their hand, put my hand out, shook their hand, introduced myself. Conversation 2, checked. Long story short, I ended up having 12 connected conversations that day instead of the 5 that I had set out to do. I could have left after the 5th one, but by the time I was having the 5th one, it wasn't just that person. That person came with someone else. So I had 2 at once. And then they introduced me to someone else that they had just met, that they thought might be someone I'd like to meet, someone I could connect with. And then they were talking with 2 other people. Right? So that was 3 at once. And then I turned around and I saw someone who I had met before. And they said, you know what, let me introduce you to someone else. And they introduced me to 2 more people. Right? And so by the time I left, I had more than doubled my intention of being there because I focused on one conversation at a time, not on trying to meet 350 people. 350 is intimidating. 1 is not so much. right? So focus on having one conversation at a time and being fully present in that conversation. The more present you are, the more that person is going to feel compelled to introduce you to someone else, because they're going to see that you're not after their wallet, that you're not after getting something from them, that you're not after just being needy and clingy. So they're going to feel comfortable introducing you to someone else. And even if they're not, now you have one in your pocket. You're closer to your intention, to your goal, so you can go and be bold in the next one, right? And then the third thing is turn the spotlight. Turn the spotlight. What I find makes networking the most intimidating is when the spotlight is on you. When you feel like everybody's watching you, or when you feel like you have to, like I said before, be on for people, or when you feel like you have to have all the answers or have the right thing to say. Well, if you turn the spotlight and you focus on the other person, if you ask them questions, if you let them go first, if you let them talk, if you are fully committed to hearing them out and the focus is on them, then guess what? The pressure is off of you. You no longer feel the pressure to be interesting or to be charismatic or to be fun or to be, I don't know, engaging in any way, shape, or form, because all you're doing now is trying to be engaged with the other person, is being interested in what they have to say, in who they are, in what their ambitions are, in what they're after, in why they came, in what it is that brought them out of their house to wherever it is that you are, or what brought them onto the screen in this particular occasion if it's online, right? But when you focus the spotlight on them, when you turn the spotlight towards them, then the pressure is off of you. And guess what? As a side effect, as a result of that, people will think that you're interesting and charismatic and fun and all these other things, because people love to hear themselves talk. And people love it when you can make them the center of attention. And especially when you really pay attention, you're really focused, and you keep asking questions for them to elaborate on whatever they have just said. Or when you say things like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. I would love to hear more. And when you are focused on them, eventually they will say, oh, wait, I've been talking for like 10 minutes. Tell me about you. And then you just get to say something short and turn it back to them. You don't need to allow the focus or the spotlight to be on you at any point in time. You can always shift it back by just asking another question, right? Like if they do that to me, they're like, oh, wait, I've been talking for 10 minutes. Tell me about you. I would say something like, well, I'm a speaking and leadership coach, and I absolutely love helping people be confident and be strong when they present themselves in front of others. Tell me more about what that sounds like to you, or tell me more about when was the last time you had to speak in front of someone or in front of a group or whatever. I find a way to ask a question that turns the spotlight back to them. And then I keep enforcing them or reinforcing them to keep telling me more and more and more and more, right? So let me recap. The first one was clarify your intention. Be really, really clear on why you're going there and how you're going to know when you actually accomplished your goal. Second, focus on one person at a time and be really, really present, right? So one-on-one conversations in bulk. And third, turn the spotlight on them and not on you. And here's the bonus. Here's the bonus. Because when I tell this to people, when I work with clients and I help them get through this, one of the things that they always tell me is, but wait, that sounds lovely and awesome, but what if you can't even get in the door? What if you're so afraid, so terrified that you can't even turn the camera on if it's a virtual event? And trust me, I was the one that would go to virtual networking events. And when the time for breakout rooms came, I would leave the meeting. I would just leave. I would exit the meeting and not be there anymore. I would be there for the collective and then leave when the spotlight was about to be on me for whatever reason. So how do you get to that space where you're comfortable enough, or when you can move past the fear enough to actually go in if it's that paralyzing, if it's that horrible? So my way of getting to it is I name my fear. I name my fear, and then I have a conversation with my fear. And I know that sounds weird, but if I am about to go into a networking event and what I feel is that I'm going to be embarrassed, right? I'm like, oh, embarrassment, there you are again. And sometimes I have a full-on conversation in the car while I'm going there. And that's the best thing I do since I drive by myself, right, to the events. I'm like, okay, there you are, embarrassment. What are you worried about? Let's talk it out. And I allow myself to talk out all the reasons why I feel afraid, all the reasons why I feel worried that I'm going to be embarrassed, or all the reasons why I feel whatever it is that I'm feeling that is making it hard for me to step in there. And then I say things like, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I know that in the past we have been embarrassed in situations. But see, you can only be embarrassed if the focus is on you. And you can only be embarrassed if you pay attention to what other people might be thinking or saying about you. But if you're focused on other people, if you're focused on serving, if you're focused on how interesting they are, if you're focused on learning more about them, then you're never going to do anything that's going to embarrass you, right? So thank you for reminding me that I need to be focused on other people. And then I walk in there convinced that that's my goal, that that's what I get to do. So I just name my fear. The other thing that I used to teach my students when I was a school teacher, and that I still work with my clients on, is identifying what other meanings you can attach to the feelings that might make more sense, right? Or that might help you, that might be more empowering in the moment. I used to tell my students, and you might have heard me say this before, that when you're in love, when you fall in love, right? You feel, or let's start with fear. When you're in fear, you feel butterflies in your stomach, your hands get clammy, you get all sweaty, you get shaky, you get this rumbling in your stomach, right? You get all these feelings in your body. When you fall in love, what do you feel? Butterflies in your stomach, clammy hands, sweaty, nerve, right? You feel pretty much the same things in your body if you're only identifying the symptoms, right? So to speak. So why don't we call it excitement instead of calling it fear? Why don't we call it anticipation instead of calling it nervousness? They feel the same. What makes the difference is the definition and the name we give it. So look at the name you're giving it. Like in the example I gave you before, if I'm giving it the name embarrassment, why can't I change that to curiosity? Right? What I'm feeling, it's not fear of embarrassment. What I'm feeling is a great curiosity to see what other people do, to see what other people have to say. And by shifting the name, by shifting the label that you give it, you shift the power and the energy it has and the effect it has on you ultimately, right? So I hope this helps as we move forward and as we continue to work towards our intentions. If one of your intentions is to connect more with people, which I believe it should be, if you are going out there to network but you're finding it difficult, try those 3 things, right? First, be crystal clear on your intention. Second, be present by focusing on one person at a time. Third, turn the spotlight the other way, turn it on them, not on you. And as a bonus, name your fear. Give it a name that helps it become playful, that helps it become something that's useful, something that's empowering, and go with that name and have a conversation with your fear. It's there to help you. It's not there to harm you. So use it to your advantage by having these conversations. Now, if you have found this helpful, go ahead and share it with as many friends as you know that could benefit from this conversation. And also, I want to invite you to head on over to marciamaro.com, where you can find more resources, free resources, more ideas on how to succeed, use communication, use your messaging, and connect with the right people, and also information about future upcoming trainings. I hope to see you in all my trainings and to see you next week here on Sincerely Speaking. Have a great week.